you hear me okay, Maria?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Thank you. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Niall Hornan. I'm part of the Global Galway team in the University of Galway. I'd like to introduce you to this webinar, the LLM in International Human Rights. Just first off, this webinar will be hopefully interactive. So if you have any questions during this webinar, please post them to the bottom right of your screen. This webinar is also being recorded. So if there's any issues or if there's anything you want to look back on a later date, you can do so on the Ambassador platform. First off, I'd like to pass you over to my colleague Maria Ryan from the School of Law, and she'll take you through the general introductions. Maria?
Thanks, Mal, for the introduction, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining the webinar. I am the Marketing and Student Recruitment Officer within the School of Law, and today we will be discussing our LLM in International Human Rights. I'm also joined on the call by the Programme Director and Director of the Irish Centre for Human Rights, Siobhán Mullally, and Dr Maeve O'Rourke as well. So I will briefly pass you over to both of those to provide a brief intro.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Siobhán Mullally, as Maria said, Director of the Irish Centre for Human Rights, and joined by my colleague, Dr Maeve O'Rourke, who directs our Human Rights Clinic, which she will highlight more. So we're delighted to welcome you. We're going to talk about the LLM programme in International Human Rights Law, which is the longest standing human rights law LLM of our programmes and in Ireland. If we can move ahead on the slides. The Irish Centre for Human Rights is part of the law school at the University of Galway, but it is also interdisciplinary, and that I think is quite important for us to highlight, that we teach our subjects from an interdisciplinary perspective, and we receive students from diverse backgrounds. It's a very international cohort of students, but also students with backgrounds in law, in politics, international relations, and social work and community activism. And that brings a great richness to the classroom, the diversity of backgrounds, of training and experiences in the classroom. The very nice picture there on the slides is of the Irish Centre for Human Rights. It's a historic building at the entrance to the campus. And we have our seminars based mostly here at the centre. The Irish Centre for Human Rights is a globally recognised human rights institute. We have particular strengths in areas of peace and conflict resolution, in gender and human rights, in human rights movement lawyering, and in aspects of international criminal justice, humanitarian law, refugee and migration law, and increasingly also in areas such as climate justice and business and human rights. So this is one of the strengths of the Human Rights Centre, is this very dynamic teaching and research environment with students from across the globe. Next slide. The faculty are listed there, and you can see the range of interests and areas of expertise of our staff on the website. All of our classes are taught by internationally renowned experts in their field, who specialise also in real-world practical experience. So we work very closely with international courts and tribunals, with national human rights institutions, with community organizations, with lawyers, with the United Nations, and with activists in different parts of the world. And the teaching staff bring that real world experience into the classroom. And as much as possible, we try to give students opportunities and an experience to engage directly with the practice of human rights law and with the politics of human rights. We're also very fortunate to have a very distinguished adjunct faculty, including internationally renowned judges such as Judge Oscar Para-Vera from the Colombia Special Jurisdiction for Peace, Professor Dr Gunael Metro, who's an adjunct professor and also a judge of the Kosovo Specialist Chambers, and Judge Betty Holer, who's a judge of the International Criminal Court. Dagmar Hofstadt, who works particularly on human rights archives and transitional justice. Blinny Grawley, who's a renowned human rights lawyer and practitioner, and Colonel Brennan, who's the head of legal services in the Irish Defence Forces, and honorary professor, distinguished legal academic, Professor Shashikala Gurpur, who's Dean of the Symbiosis Law School in India and a former member of the Law Reform Commission of India. And I highlight those because that, I think, reflects also a very distinguished international network, and all of our adjuncts engage directly with students through guest seminars, lectures, workshops and events, which give students a great opportunity to hear about the practice of human rights law and also the kind of career paths and opportunities that are available to them. Thank you. Next slide. These are some of the teaching staff here at the Irish Centre for Human Rights across a range of areas, from peacekeeping operations, international criminal justice, refugee migration law, gender and human rights, Islam and human rights, the rights of older persons. Dr Maeve O'Rourke has recently published a leading monograph with Oxford University Press, for example, and also areas such as European human rights law and transitional justice. And again, you can find more about the particular research interests and practical expertise of our staff on the website. Next slide. So this is, I'll give you a very brief outline of the program, and I encourage you to look further at the materials. We offer a core module in international human rights law, which is taught from an interdisciplinary perspective, looking at the history and politics and philosophy of human rights, with a focus then on complex and current human rights challenges and current debates. So it's an advanced course in international human rights law, taught in a seminar format, very discursive and interactive. And then students choose from a very wide range of elective modules. And this, I think, is a very unique aspect of the program, because we have such a diverse and specialized team of academic and practitioners teaching on the program. You can mix your program with options from business and human rights, gender and human rights, international criminal justice, migration, refugee law, climate justice, across a whole range. And we also offer a module on the Human Rights Clinic, which Maeve will talk about, which is specifically focused on aspects of movement lawyering. Students also complete a dissertation over the summer period on a research topic of their choice, supervised by staff at the centre. And again, this allows students to develop a further expertise, to think about their career path and future plans, and to build on what they have learned throughout the year. Throughout the programme, we have a very busy guest speaker series. Just this week, for example, I should say, we have the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and the Environment for a seminar with our master's students. We have a Gender and Human Rights masterclass. We've just had a lunchtime seminar looking at the situation of Afghan refugees in Iran, and multiple upcoming events, including our annual Distinguished Lecture, which will be delivered by Judge Deary Claudel of the International Court of Justice. So these are key elements of our program: research-led teaching, a focus on practical skills, a curriculum that looks at current debates and is very wide-ranging and allows students a broad range of choices. We also give students the opportunity to undertake an annual field trip to The Hague to visit international courts and tribunals. We have very strong links with the international courts and tribunals in The Hague, including with our adjunct professors, Judge Holer and Judge Gunael Metro. So students have the opportunity to really immerse themselves in the work of the international courts and tribunals. Our students have also visited the UN in Geneva, attended the sessions of the Human Rights Council, and also attended sessions of UN human rights treaty bodies, and even presented before treaty body review sessions. So that reflects the level of expertise and the wide range of international experience that we have. I currently hold a UN mandate as Special Rapporteur on Human Trafficking, and my students engage directly with my work as Special Rapporteur and have observed the various presentations to the UN that I engage with, but also we introduce students to other special procedures and treaty bodies. A few examples: we have a team of students working with the UN Working Group on Mercenaries. We have another team of students working with the UN Special Rapporteur in Palestine. And we have students providing background research and briefings for the country visit of the UN Special Rapporteur on the environment. So these are just some examples, and we'll talk about those more. Next slide. Thank you. This is a list of the various modules and subject options. We provide course outlines in advance, so preparatory readings. You can explore these in further detail. And as I've mentioned, there's a very broad range. So you can combine areas like refugee and migration law with gender, transitional justice, international child rights, counterterrorism, international environmental law, climate justice. So a very broad range of subject areas. And I might hand over now to talk about our very unique module on the Human Rights Law Clinic, which is available only to students on this programme. Maeve, thank you.
Thanks a million, Siobhán, and it's lovely to see the list of people here listening. The Human Rights Law Clinic has a webpage of its own, so it's possible to go and have a look at that for more information if you're interested in what I'm giving an overview of here. But the idea of the clinic, which is a 10-credit module, is to get students involved in real-life human rights lawyering, to develop a range of practical skills, to build your relationships not only with each other, which is very important and makes the entire year more enjoyable, but also to develop relationships with staff within the centre and in other related disciplines and across the School of Law where relevant, and also practitioners and groups and communities across the world working on human rights issues. It definitely also deepens your ethical understanding of what it means to do human rights lawyering, and it definitely widens your professional horizons, giving you an insight into all of the different ways that you can be a human rights lawyer. So the clinic introduces students to a very wide range of topics and strategies and advocates. Students might work with, for example, practitioners such as the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the Occupied Palestinian Territory, or, for example, Professor Mullally as Special Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons. They might work then at a different end of the spectrum in terms of, an approach to human rights lawyering, working with community groups, for example, across several continents, resisting fossil fuel exploration on human rights grounds. Students have worked in the past with the movement of asylum seekers in Ireland. They've worked with groups campaigning and advocating to end homelessness and domestic violence. They've worked with survivors of historical abuse and forced family separation in institutions, with relatives of older people who've experienced abuse or even died in institutions during COVID in very neglectful circumstances. And they've worked with groups of adopted people seeking access to their identifying information and working on the very technical but very important laws around data protection. Just to give you a sample, again, you can find out more on the webpage. And so in terms of the work that you might produce within the clinic, students have produced proposals for new legislation, for UN resolutions. They've contributed to official UN reports by the special rapporteurs, for example. They've written submissions to numerous human rights treaty bodies, and they've created very interesting other types of communication of their research through podcasts, websites, short films, for example. And the strategies, therefore, that we teach can be described overall as movement lawyering, which Siobhán mentioned, or cause lawyering, or social change lawyering, or public interest lawyering, in the sense that what we teach is essentially everything that human rights lawyers do and must do outside of court to advance change in circumstances that are very embedded and complex. So the notion of movement lawyering is this notion that the people affected by human rights violations are the absolute experts in what those violations mean and in the strategies that are needed to overcome them, and that as a human rights lawyer, it is possible and most effective to roll up your sleeves and get involved in ongoing and long-standing campaigns by the very people affected and those working closely with them to achieve social change. So the skills that you would gain are extremely wide-ranging, very traditional skills such as independent research and report writing, of course, but also research that would involve, for example, using freedom of information, parliamentary questions, newspaper and other archival analysis, writing for newspapers, giving radio or even television interviews, interviewing people, creating short films, podcast episodes, website design, organizing public meetings, public and student education, campaign tactics such as letter writing and petition formulation, writing and sending press releases, political advocacy such as presenting to politicians, and also the international human rights advocacy at the UN, for example. So it's a very supportive environment in the sense that we meet very regularly as a class. And so you work in a small group, you work with community organisers or other human rights practitioners, but at all times you're supported by the teaching staff and you get to meet with each other and discuss how you're getting on, progress, but also the challenges. So I think that gives hopefully a useful overview, and I'm always available to ask more questions. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Maeve, for the in-depth insight into the Human Rights Law Clinic. We will now move on to admissions and entry requirements. So Niall will pop in any links into the chat relating to this, and this will cover all of those general questions about how to apply any entry requirements. But if there are anything specific relating to your application, please feel free to reach out to lawpostgrad@universityofgalway.ie and we can address any of those concerns. And then just to touch on Galway as a university city and place to relocate, because I think that's also a really important factor if you are an international student looking at where you would be moving to. And luckily for us, Galway is a definitely friendly and charming city. It was ranked first in Europe for student friendliness in 2024, and it's very rich in culture, whether that's arts and film, food, culture, and we are located in an area where you are close to a lot of different landmarks and viewpoints, which a lot of our international students do look to complete during term break or at the weekends, and it really is a hub for culture in Galway. And looking at the campus, the university is really based in the heart of Galway city centre. So as you can see, it's really close proximity. It's approximately a 10-minute walk. So with this, a lot of international students find it really easily accessible, where you can walk to and from the university, and it's very central. And looking at our current student body, it is very internationally represented. We have over 27 nationalities, which makes for a really diverse and inclusive student experience. We also have some postgraduate taught awards. So with the September intake, we have one up to 50% off tuition fee scholarship available for one student. It's also important to note that the Government of Ireland International Education Scholarship is available for non-EU and non-EEA students within Ireland, and all of our programs are applicable for this scholarship, and there are 60 places awarded across all Irish higher education institutions. And why we encourage early applications for LLM programs is that the closing date for this is March 2026. So it is great to get your application in early to be considered for these different postgraduate taught awards. And as mentioned, if you do have any queries, you can email us directly at lawpostgrad@University of Galway. We have also newly updated our website, so you will see that there's a lot of course information. You can look at the different modules available. You can have an in-depth insight into some of the academics who will be teaching your program. So I would definitely look at the programs on the newly launched website. And if you do have any questions, you can pop them into the participants chat now, and we will happily answer any of those.
Thank you, Maria. Just while we wait for people to ask some questions, can I ask both Maeve and Siobhán? I see quite a few familiar faces looking at the global perspective, and I can see there's 25 different nationalities. Where have the students come from? What parts of the world?
So we're one of the most exciting things about teaching on this program, and I think all of the feedback from students also is that it's such a global network of students. So we have many students from Europe, from the Americas, both North America, USA, Canada, also Latin America. We have great students from the African region, across the African region. We have students from South Asia, from East Asia, from China, for example, Australia, Philippines. So really a really global network. I can, off the top of my head, this year we've students from Malawi, Somalia, Germany, the Netherlands, USA, India, China, from across Europe, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and further afield. So a really dynamic group of students, and at all different stages of career. So some who are mid-career professionals deciding to take time out to change direction or get further training or specialization. Others who are coming directly from undergraduate study who really want to pursue a master's program and specialize across the area of human rights law. Others who are in legal practice or working with government or international organizations and taking time to pursue and deepen their study in human rights. We've people working in public policy and social work, community activism from here in Ireland, as well as this very diverse range of students. So it's a very vibrant classroom, people who are highly motivated and from interdisciplinary backgrounds. I think that's important as well. It's a master's in human rights law, but I know it's a query that we often get. Students come from different backgrounds, not necessarily legal, and we provide training on legal research skills and legal writing, so that those core skills are covered, and students get that support at the beginning of the program. But also they bring their own strengths, and the subjects are taught from a diverse disciplinary perspective also, and students really thrive in that interdisciplinary mix.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something our global team often get questions about, what's the interaction in the classroom. And we'll come to a question from Christine in a moment. And just in terms of the alumni, can you think of any alumni, and I know you mentioned different places they can go, or do you know any particular alumni who've gone on to do certain things around the world that maybe our viewers might be familiar with?
Absolutely, and I should have mentioned that. Yeah, in terms of the career paths, one thing I should say is we provide support to students, and we're aware that it's a challenging time. We have a number of career workshops and seminars to highlight the different opportunities. There's a careers link on our website, which gives a list of different sites and portals, but we also bring guest speakers. So just in recent weeks and in the coming weeks, we have one of our recent graduates who's now in Malawi working with Irish Rule of Law International. He'll be talking about his work on prisoners' rights and access to justice. We have another alumni who's joining us from Geneva, where he works with the International Myanmar Mechanism, one of the investigative mechanisms of the UN Human Rights Council. And he'll be talking about his career path on fact-finding, international criminal justice investigations, documenting human rights violations, particularly relating to the situation in Myanmar and the situation in relation to Rohingya refugees. We've also just recently had a seminar with one of our alumni who's worked with the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Jordan in relation to the situation in Palestine, who's also worked with UN Women and worked with the diplomatic mission of the Irish Ministry of Foreign Affairs in New York, including presenting at the Sixth Committee, the Legal Committee at the UN, observing Ireland's and participating in Ireland's membership at the Security Council. So our graduates go on to legal practice in areas of specialism in business and human rights, or gender, or immigration and refugee law. And in my work as a UN Special Rapporteur in different parts of the world, I keep meeting our alumni. For example, working with the Human Rights Office of the UN mission in South Sudan, working with the Human Rights Office in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, working with government and the Ministry of Justice in Liberia, working on minority rights issues in Canada, working on immigration and asylum law in the US, working on peace building with a Canadian institute, engaging in currently working with Gambia, for example. Some go on to diplomacy and foreign affairs. Some work with community organizations, civil society and activism. Others work with national human rights institutions. And also for European students, there's the opportunity of European institutions, EU institutions in particular, but also at the Americas. We've had students working at the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. We have also close contacts with the African human rights institutions, and in the ASEAN and across the Asian region as well, with Asia Pacific civil society organizations, with government and foreign affairs, and in legal practice. So very diverse range, and we are mindful of supporting students as they develop those career paths. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Sorry, thanks.
Oh, that's very comprehensive. I think the only thing that also occurred to me is that we do receive quite a number of students who are changing career focus. So we often have people who've practiced in another area of law, often commercial law, for say a decade, who have always thought they would like actually to practice in human rights, and doing the masters is a fantastic way of them making that shift. I suppose learning the additional areas of knowledge that they need, but also having the time and then developing the connections that enable them to transfer into a different area of legal practice. Or we might have had people who have run big development NGOs who actually want to add a human rights law focus and slightly shift the way that they work within the overall field of international relations and human rights. So that also adds an amazing element of experience to the student cohort. And it really is, I suppose, intergenerational as well as interdisciplinary, that you have people with immense expertise who are actually, though, new to human rights law, but sharing their experience in ways that are very relevant, and making friends with the students who may be younger and at the beginning of their trajectory. So it's a fascinating and really enjoyable experience for everyone.
That sounds great to see all of our students doing so well. I might come to Christine's question. It is related to language. So what might be best is if Maria was to put up the admissions email again, so it's something we can look at later. So I'm not too sure that particular question now related to the WIAC exam. So if you wanted to contact that email there, Christine, I think they'd be best placed then to kind of answer that. So we'd have to look back on the particular WIAC exam and what it involves for that. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I believe that is all the questions. So I'd just like to thank Maria Ryan and her colleagues in the School of Law for this webinar. It's very informative, so do keep in contact, and we hope to see you all in Galway in September. Okay, thank you everyone. Take care.